Hello, and welcome back to Sharing a Chapter a Day. This is Do, Ra, me, and today I will be reading Chapter 120 of Engagement in Peril by Dara, Odoe, Sup. Chapter 120 is titled Inmate Bradford's Cowardly Way Out. Shameful and dumbfounded from the terrifying Christmas morning commotion from the action of one drunk-off-ass Marine, the U.S. Marine Corps court-martialed inmate Bradford Jackson. Swiftly, a few days later, after getting caught and incarcerated, they put him on trial for his crime against Kushina Shinigami. They rushed the proceeding, and Kushina didn't have to be in the military court hearing to be a witness or act as an accuser. They had enough evidence to throw the book at Bradford then. During his quick, speedy trial, Bradford was in his full-dress blue fatigue, all decked out from head to toe, his high and tight crew cut sharp and his head held high. He had come to accept what was about to be dealt to him. Bradford pleaded guilty to all charges and didn't bother fighting over any of the charges brought upon and against him. He had realized this that he then as he sat in the cell before his trial to take place. Of what he had done to Kushina, the barmaid, whom he had liked. He saw the blood all over his trouser and all over the bloodstain all over his upper waist area. He realized that he was that demon that everyone feared. He had seen the fear and anguish in her eyes when she came to identify him in the brig holding area earlier. He had accepted his crime and was ready to accept his punishment as well. He just couldn't believe what he had become and what a bastard he had become. As the court-martial trial came to an end, his punishment was deliberate and deliberated. His jury of Marine peers and officers have all agreed to charge him with the various crimes of abduction, rape, and torture, and of conduct unbecoming to a Marine Corps personnel. Bradford was sentenced to 20 years to life of hard labor in the U.S. disciplinary barrack at Fort Leavenworth in Leavenworth, Kansas. He had nothing to say at the end. When allowed to say his last word, he accepted his punishment and gave a slight smirk about his whole ordeal, as several Marine military police handcuffed his hands and placed ankle bracelets onto him and walked him off in handcuffs and ankle chains toward his holding cell several floors below the courtroom they were just in. Now clothed in a one-piece orange jumpsuit and his bootlace gone and anything else could use to hang himself or harm himself were taken away from him, Bradford waited for his transfer to the States. He seemed calm now. He thought a few times about Kushina and how regrettable he seemed about what he had done to her. But he didn't show any of that during his entire trial a few hours earlier, several floors above him. He wasn't looking for or seeking any sympathy from anyone there. Bradford was never religious, so he never got down on his knees to pray to the Lord then. He was cold and collected during the court-martial trial. He didn't say much, except to agree with all that he had understood, that he understood the charges and such. He had told his legal counsel that he was accepting all charges and he didn't want to fight against anything. He realized that he was now possessed. Possessed by the very demon that made him did what he did to Kushina on that horrendous early Christmas morning. With his hand down from his shame and apologetic about his action and order upon someone he had liked, in a cowardly way Bradford took off his dog tag around his relaxed neck and head. He prepared himself for what he was about to do. Bradford took several deep breaths, deep inhale, long exhale. He continued to do this until he was dizzy and numb from his preparation. In the direction of a few other caged Marines in cells enclosed and nearby, he smirked his last smile and proceeded to swallow the 2 dog tags down his mouth, esophagus, and throat whole. With the dog tags firmly held in his ankle fingers and right hand, he jammed the 2 pieces of metal military issue aluminum identification with his name, social security number, blood type, religious preference, and branch of service inscribed were on. Slowly he pushed deeper and deeper down his throat, widening his mouth to get more of his fist down his throat, choking at times. Fluid from his lung and mouth rushed out between the opening and cracks of his fist. but refusing to pull his arm out of his mouth, and caressing his neck and throat around with his free hand to ease the stuffing of the dog tag, he continued on. To the other confined Marines looked on in fear and amusement, scared of their mind and what was going on. These once hardcore brute began yelling at the top of their lung for help from the Marine security guards, who were preoccupied outside the holdings area. These jarhead never seen this sort of things before, and it was making them sick to their stomach. They all screamed at the Bradford to stop, screaming at the top of their lungs, screaming at each other and screaming at the top of their lungs for help from the outside. By the time Marine security guard replied and came to check on the commotion that was going on in the holding area, it was too late. Bradford had accomplished his last decent task, the task of killing himself by choking himself to death with his own dog tag and fists. The holding cell guard found Bradford's dead body with his right hand, with his right arms, elbow high, halfway down his throat. Bradford's dead body stood there on his knees. Bradford's dead body stood there on his 2 knees. Like a statue of gargoyle, he was frozen in time, with no breath of life or sign of a pulse. The guard didn't bother touching him. They called up to the officer in charge, and several medics were dispatched to come and identify the act of death. Several minutes later, a medical officer and several of his corpsman staff were brought in to pronounce Bradford's death, how he died and what time he died. They were all in shock of what they saw. None had seen this sort of death before. It was eerie to them. One may say it was a satanic of sort. The posture of him on his knee was firm and astute. While one held the dead body in place where it was, one went about to look for a pulse or any vital sign. None was found, and the medical officer pronounced the time of death at 1900 hour and death by suicide. Picture of his death was also taken for record keeping. The medical examiner also charted that the death was committed by stuffing one's fist down his throat with dog tag held firmly in fists. In shock, the other held Marine asked what was going on. No one really gave them a concise answer. They just said he's dead. Some said he choked himself. Some said they saw some kind of demon came out of him, and some said something else. Inmate Jackson Bradford had taken the cowardly way out then. Inmate Jackson Bradford had taken the cowardly way out then. He had committed suicide. In some eerie and worried way, Bradford's death reminded me of how Shinshin died too. But I just know that Shinshin wasn't the type to do this to himself. He's nothing like his god-forsaken father. Nothing at all. And he wouldn't have cowardly killed himself off over some bullshit like this. Not over some disease-infested whore like Delilah and her mother. I'm sure that bitch of a whore and her conniving mother had something to do with his death. And I'm gonna prove that they had something to do with my beloved Shinshin's death then. Rest in peace, Shinshin. Rest in peace, my beloved. I'm gonna do my best to get you justice. If that's the last thing I do for you in my lifetime. You'll see. Thank you for listening. This is the end of Chapter 120. Be on the lookout for Chapter 121, titled Shinshin Nagami, Brewing Inside Young Kushina. This is Do, Ra, me, and I'll see you later. Thank you.